Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this underlying expectation of just sheer precision.
Right. Yeah, like it's engineering or something.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the screen. And the doctor just points a pen at it and says, there it is.
It's binary. And honestly, fundamentally, it's deeply comforting because, we as humans have this innate desire for things to be visible.
Yeah, we want our problems categorized.
Placed in neat little boxes with clear labels. You're broken or you're not broken. You're sick or you're healthy.
But then you step into the world of human consciousness or like neurodevelopment and trauma, and suddenly that trusty x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Oh, and entirely useless.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, quite honestly, murky at best.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating when you can't just point to a jagged line on a scan to explain, why someone is struggling to get out of bed or why a brilliant child can't focus in a standard classroom.
Well, murky is the perfect word for it because for a long time, the scientific and psychological communities have essentially just accepted that murkiness as like a permanent limitation of our science.
Right. We just manage it.
Yeah, we treat the symptoms because the root architectures of the mind are just too obscured to measure with our traditional tools.
But what if the problem isn't the landscape itself? What if the problem is that we've been using the wrong map entirely?
That is the million-dollar question.
So, welcome to the deep dive. To you, our eternally curious listener, get comfortable and prepare yourself, because today we are embarking on a truly mind-bending exploration.
We really are.
We are diving into a body of work that essentially takes that old binary x-ray machine, throws it out the window, and replaces it with this massive, multidimensional observatory.
That is a phenomenal way to frame what we are about to do today. We are looking at this incredibly dense avant-garde corpus by the author and architect of thought, Alain-Henri Regis-Imbert. Specifically, we're diving into his monumental text, The Echoes of the Prism of Odysseys, or, in the original French, Le Prisme des Odyssees.
And I want to issue a gentle warning right up front for you listening. Calling this a book is wildly insufficient.
Yeah, it really doesn't do it justice.
It's like calling the ocean a puddle. The author actually describes it as a living library. It's this evolving architecture that attempts to map out human consciousness, cosmology, and biology.
It's massively ambitious.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack the 7 monumental paradigm shifts and the 7 innovative theories that emerge from this colossal work.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
But by the time we finish, we will have bridged everything from the subatomic physics of what you eat to the literal architecture of psychological trauma. Is going to challenge your most fundamental assumptions about how you perceive reality.
But, to really grasp the weight of what Imbert is doing here, we first have to talk about how he built this structure.
Okay, let's start there.
Because anyone can write speculative philosophy, right? Or mystical poetry. The internet is absolutely full of it.
Oh yeah, everybody has a theory.
Exactly. But what gives the Prism of Odysseys its incredible structural integrity is a principle the author calls epistemic hygiene.
Okay, wait, let me pause you there. Epistemic hygiene. I'm literally picturing someone scrubbing their hands with antibacterial soap before, like putting on a lab coat and doing science.
That's a great visual.
What does that actually mean in the context of reading a philosophical text, though?
It's not far off from that image, honestly, but applied to methodology. So epistemology is the study of knowledge, right? How we know what we know.
Right.
Imbert builds this strict, rigorous rule into the very architecture of the text. He explicitly and structurally separates documented science from speculative hypothesis.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, for instance, he will talk about heart rate variability or the first law of thermodynamics. Those are grounded, measurable scientific facts. And he separates those from areas of active research like, say, human magnetoreception.
So things we are currently testing in labs, but just haven't fully locked down yet.
Right. Those sit in their own distinct category. And crucially, both of those categories are strictly isolated from his highly speculative hypotheses.
Like what kind of hypotheses?
Things like tachyon physics or faster-than-light information transfer. He uses very specific textual markers to tell the reader at every single moment exactly what kind of epistemological ground they are standing on.
Oh, I love that. Because it's so easy for modern thought leaders to just, blur those lines.
They do it all the time.
They really do. They take a concept from quantum physics, mash it up with some vague spirituality, and suddenly they present a metaphor as if it's a medical fact.
Exactly. It's dangerous.
But this epistemic hygiene gives us permission to go all the way down the rabbit hole with him. We can explore these massive cosmic ideas because we know there's a safety rope tying us back to actual physics.
You're hitting on the core of his credibility right there. It forces us to ask, how do you build a system that explores the furthest, most uncharted reaches of human consciousness without losing scientific grounding?
Yeah,
You
totally.
do it by being ruthlessly, painstakingly honest about what is proven, what is being tested, and what is pure, unadulterated exploration.
So holding on to that safety rope, let's look at the structure itself.
Yeah.
You mentioned this isn't a normal book, and that brings us to the first major conceptual leap. The text is built on what Imbert calls the Prism of Odysseys framework.
That's right. Theory number one.
To understand his specific theories on biology or trauma, we have to understand the container holding them, and it's a four-dimensional structure.
Yes, the container itself is a theory of knowledge. It's not a linear table of contents where you read chapter 1 and then move to chapter 2. It's divided into 4 Odysseys, which function, well, like faces of a prism.
Okay, walk me through the phases.
The first Odyssey is the inner cosmos. This is the mapping of the mind. It looks inward at our archetypes, our internal psychological geography, and the symbolic civilizations we build inside our own heads to survive.
So that's the deeply internal dimension. Where does the second face of the prism look?
The second Odyssey shifts outward. It's called the metacosmology of consciousness.
Metacosmology, okay.
This is essentially the physics of observation. It explores how our internal interfaces interact with the external world. Like, how do we perceive time? How does the physical act of our attention interact with physical matter?
Inside and then outside. It feels like we're establishing the two poles of human experience.
We are, which allows the third Odyssey to explore the space where they meet. This is the ontopoiesis of worlds in the making.
Ontopoiesis, that's a big word.
It is, but it's such a beautiful term. It combines onto meaning being or existence and poiesis meaning to make or create. It's about the active genesis of reality.
Okay, I think I'm following.
It asks, how do the inner mind and the outer physics co-evolve to engineer entirely new realities?
So if the first three are dealing with the inner mind, the physical reality, and the creation of new worlds, there has to be some sort of structural glue holding all of those dimensions together, right? What is the fourth phase?
The fourth Odyssey is the hidden phase. This is the invisible metastructure. It is the realm of symmetries, permutations, and the unseen networks that govern the first three.
So it's kind of like the background system.
Exactly. If you think of the first three Odysseys as the software running the universe, the fourth Odyssey is the source code running in the background, ensuring the whole structure can endlessly adapt and balance itself.
Okay, here is how I'm picturing this in my head. Instead of a linear encyclopedia where I read from A to Z, passively absorbing facts, this framework is like a tesseract, or maybe like a massive conceptual Rubik's Cube.
A Rubik's Cube is a great way to look at it.
Right, because you can turn one face of it, say, an idea about psychological trauma from the first Odyssey, and it suddenly aligns with a concept in quantum observation from the second Odyssey.
Yeah.
And the alignment creates a totally new color, a completely new insight that just wouldn't exist if the text were linear.
That is the exact mechanism Imbert is designing. And that alignment you just described initiates our first major paradigm shift of the text.
Which is?
It's the transition from reading static text to engaging in what the corpus calls metapoiesis.
Metapoiesis. So expanding on the word we just talked about, meaning the creation of something new.
Beyond just creating something new, it means creating the underlying conditions that allow future creations to appear. The prism acts as a living organism.
Wow.
When you read a normal textbook, your brain basically operates like a hard drive storing files. But when you navigate the prism, because of how these concepts are cross-networked, the very act of reading it generates new neural pathways.
So you aren't just consuming it.
No, it shifts humanity away from being passive consumers of data and attempts to turn us into active architects of our own cognitive environments.
It's almost like the text itself is a piece of workout equipment for the brain.
Yeah.
It trains you to think multidimensionally just by navigating its architecture.
Exactly.
But, that implies our brains are capable of a lot more than just storing data. And that sets up a massive redefinition of the hardware we're using to do that thinking.
Right, and this is paradigm shift number 2, the neurological shift. This is where Imbert directly challenges the standard neurological model.
Okay.
Because the prevailing view in modern science is that the brain is just a generator. It creates consciousness entirely within the dark vault of the skull through the chemical and electrical firing of neurons.
Right. Consciousness, in that view, is just a byproduct of meat.
a very complex meat computer, exactly the prevailing view.
Yeah.
But the corpus proposes a radical reframing through what it terms the five visions.
The five visions.
Yeah, it views the brain not just as an isolated generator, but as a cosmic instrument with three distinct active properties: an antenna, a signal, and a substrate.
Okay, let's walk through those. The brain is an antenna first.
As an antenna, the brain is fundamentally a receiver. It is constantly picking up frequencies, subtle biomagnetic fields, and informational data from the environment.
Oh, interesting.
It doesn't just process what the eyes see or the ears hear. It is highly sensitive to the invisible energetic environment surrounding it.
And as a signal.
As a signal, it is a transmitter. Every thought, every emotional state generates its own measurable biomagnetic and electric footprint that radiates outward from the body.
Okay, and the third one? Substrate.
As a substrate, the brain is the physical medium that merges with its informational environment. It is the clay that is actively shaped by the signals it receives and transmits.
Wait, I gotta be honest. I had to step in here and admit some genuine confusion because my internal alarm bells are ringing a little bit here.
I completely understand why.
This is starting to sound heavily like science fiction.
Are we talking about telepathy?
Yeah.
Does the author actually claim we are broadcasting our thoughts into deep space like radio towers?
It sounds wild, I know. You mentioned epistemic hygiene earlier, so how is this grounded? Because it sounds like we've abandoned biology entirely.
Your skepticism is exactly what the author anticipates, and it's a vital question. This is where those epistemological markers we talked about do their heavy lifting.
Okay, lay it out for me.
The established, documented science here, the baseline, is that our brains do emit electromagnetic fields. EEG and MEG machines in hospitals measure these fields every single day.
That's true.
Furthermore, neural synchronization is a documented fact. When two people are deeply engaged in conversation, their brainwaves literally, physically align. We are undeniably transmitting and receiving at a local biological level.
Right. I read studies about that. Like when people listen to the same piece of music, their neural patterns sync up. That is proven science.
That's the baseline. But Imbert takes that baseline and stretches it to the absolute conceptual limit by introducing his speculative hypotheses.
And he labels them as such.
Exactly. He proposes a model where the brain might act as a substrate for transcosmic propagation, theoretically involving tachyons, which are hypothetical particles that travel faster than light. But he explicitly labels this as a speculative hypothesis. He's not claiming it as a medical fact.
Ah, I see. So he's basically saying, look, here's what we know for sure about our electromagnetic brains. And here's a radical speculative thought experiment about how far that could theoretically go.
Precisely the method. And the true value here isn't about proving faster than light telepathy. The value is the shift in how we view our potential.
How so?
By treating the brain as a highly sensitive, interactive node in a vast network of information, rather than an isolated calculator in a dark room, it completely changes how we interact with the world around us.
You know, that makes profound sense. Because if my brain is a hypersensitive antenna constantly receiving data, then I need to be incredibly mindful of what data I'm exposing it to.
Exactly.
And I guess that applies to everything, including what I literally put into my body. Which leads us into a completely fascinating redefinition of our physical environment and our biology.
Paradigm shift number 3.
Let's look at this concept of nutritional epigenetics and what the text calls subatomic logos.
This is one of the most practical yet beautifully profound shifts in the entire corpus. Traditionally, we view nutrition as a purely chemical, mechanical process, right?
Calories in, calories out.
Yeah, you eat a carrot, your stomach acid breaks down the cellular walls of that carrot, your intestines extract the carbohydrates, the vitamin A, the calories. It's an engine-burning fuel.
Yeah, we treat the human body like a combustion engine. We just look at the nutritional label to see how much gas we're putting in a tank.
The prism reframes digestion entirely, moving away from that mechanical view. It describes the act of eating not as a chemical breakdown, but as a thermodynamic exegesis.
Thermodynamic exegesis. Wow. Exegesis is a word usually reserved for interpreting ancient sacred texts, right? Like biblical exegesis, extracting the deep meaning from a text.
That is the exact metaphor Imbert is employing. The corpus posits that every single ingested subatomic particle carries an ontological weight. It is a vector of stored solar light.
Stored solar light, okay.
So when you eat, your digestive system is not just breaking down matter. Your cells are actively interpreting the structural history of that matter.
Let me make sure I am picturing this correctly. Let's stick with the carrot.
Okay, the carrot.
Instead of just seeing vitamin A, my body is acting more like a sommelier or a master translator. Like it's reading the history of the soil it grew in, the amount of sunlight it absorbed, the quality of the rain, and even the environmental stress that plant endured.
Considered exactly like that. You aren't just ingesting calories, you are absorbing the environmental history of the organism. You are downloading the sunlight and the stress.
Downloading the stress, that is wild.
The text poetically refers to this as extracting the fire of the sky and converting it into human nerve impulses. You are interpreting the subatomic language, the logos, of the food.
That drastically changes the concept of you are what you eat. If eating is essentially downloading a vast data set of environmental history into our cellular hard drive, how exactly are the cells communicating this data? Like, what is the physical mechanism for this?
That question brings us to one of the most avant-garde theories in the text, which is theory number 2, the theory of the source signal.
The source signal.
Yes. If we are downloading solar data, there has to be a language or a metric for it. The corpus introduces a concept termed microflumiérgie.
Microflumiérgie, that sounds like a portmanteau. Microfluids, light, which is lumière in French, and energy.
Spot on, yes. It frames the human cell not merely as a biological building block, but as a microscopic unit of consciousness. And the bridge between the physical cellular structure and this energetic consciousness is light. Specifically, biophotons.
Biophotons, so actual measurable light emitted by our bodies.
Yes, this is a real active area of scientific research. Biological systems do emit ultra-weak photons. Imbert theorizes that these biophotons are the physical manifestation of the source signal.
That is incredible.
It suggests that your biological state, your health, your stress, and your conscious, energetic state are continuously communicating through light emitted at the cellular level.
Okay, if my cells are constantly emitting light and your cells are constantly emitting light, what happens when we stand next to each other? Are our biophotons interacting?
This is exactly the leap the corpus makes, leading to paradigm shift number 4, the science of presences.
The science of presences.
Right, because for centuries, Western science has studied the isolated individual. We put a single person in an fMRI machine. We draw blood from a single arm. But the science of presences argues that the isolated individual is a biological fiction.
A biological fiction, meaning we don't actually exist in a vacuum.
We never do. We are constantly interacting, negotiating, and bleeding into the biomagnetic and informational fields of everyone around us.
So think about your own daily life to the listener tuning in right now. When you walk into a room, maybe a tense office meeting or a party full of close friends, and you instantly feel a vibe.
Everyone knows that feeling.
Right. Sometimes someone just has a heavy, exhausting presence, and another person instantly makes you feel calm. We usually write that off as just intuition or reading body language.
But Imbert would argue you aren't just reading body language. You are experiencing the literal interoperability of informational fields. Your nervous system is physically negotiating with the biomagnetic fields in that room.
Wow.
The text actually maps out a complete taxonomy of these presences, from physical and symbolic presence to what he calls traumatic and algorithmic presences. It maps the mechanics of how we are there for one another and how we impact each other at a cellular level.
If we're these highly sensitive antennas, constantly decoding the history of our food, constantly reading the biophotons of the people around us, constantly negotiating with the energetic fields of our environment, it makes absolute sense why the modern world feels so deeply exhausting.
The environmental noise is just deafening.
And this provides a profound bridge into understanding psychological pain. If our fields are constantly battered by hostile or overwhelming environments, the system has to adapt, right?
It has to, or it fails.
So how does the prism reframe the architecture of the mind when it is under siege?
This brings us to what I believe is the most compassionate, revolutionary shift in the entire work. Paradigm shift number 5. Trauma as an inner civilizational architecture.
Okay, let's unpack this one slowly.
We have to look at how traditional psychiatry views trauma first. Usually it's framed as brokenness, a malfunction. You experience something terrible and you develop post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right, the emphasis is on disorder.
Exactly. The mind is viewed as a machine that has failed to operate correctly.
The gears are jammed. It's a pathology.
Imbert completely inverts this paradigm. He argues that psychological trauma is not a breakdown. It is an incredibly sophisticated, highly structured civilization built inside the mind to survive a situation that was otherwise unsurvivable.
There's a line from the text that I highlighted multiple times because it just gave me absolute chills. Imbert writes, "The subject discovers they do not inhabit a mind, they inhabit an inner civilization."
It is a stunning reframing of human resilience. Think of an ancient city that has been bombarded during a siege. When you look at the rubble, the barricades, the reinforced doors, you don't call it a disorder of architecture.
Right. You recognize that those walls were built defensively to keep the inhabitants alive.
The human mind does the exact same thing when subjected to trauma. It builds thick walls, it creates specialized defensive roles, it alters its perception of time, memory, and identity to protect the core organism from being destroyed.
To really help us understand this, the corpus actually maps out this inner city. It gives us theory number 3, a taxonomy of these specific functional subentities the mind creates to survive.
Yes, the inner architectures.
Let's dive deep into these, because I guarantee you listeners will recognize these structures in themselves or people they love. Let's start with what the text calls the witness.
The witness is the fundamental foundational observer. When a severe crisis occurs, something that would shatter the psyche if fully felt, a part of the mind steps backward. It dissociates slightly, but it retains absolute cold lucidity.
It just watches.
It observes the trauma, records the data, and allows the body to take rational action, all while delaying the emotional shock. It is a part of you that stays perfectly calm in an emergency while everyone else panics.
It's the ultimate survival mechanism.
Huh.
It absorbs the visual data without absorbing the terror, so you can
Okay.
figure out how to escape the burning building.
Precisely. And then there is a structure called the double.
Now, the double fascinated me, specifically because of how careful Imber is to distinguish this from something like dissociative identity disorder.
Yes, it is vital to note that the double isn't about a pathological fracturing where a person loses their identity. It is the functional ability to live multiple parallel trajectories simultaneously.
Like who?
We see this often in neurodivergent individuals or people surviving highly toxic corporate or family environments. They have to maintain a highly functional, socially acceptable outward persona while simultaneously processing immense internal complexity, grief, or overstimulation.
Oh, that makes sense.
They aren't broken. They are successfully running two massive parallel operating systems at the exact same time.
They are acting as a bridge between the hostile outer world and their fragile inner world. That is amazing. And that brings us to the third architecture, which honestly broke my heart, but in a really beautiful way, the conservator.
Ah, the conservator. This is the archivist of the inner civilization. When trauma occurs, the mind's instinct might be to repress the painful memory. But the conservator refuses to let anything be lost.
It holds on to it.
It takes the pain, the exact words spoken, the tiny sensory details of the traumatic event, and it catalogs them meticulously. It turns pain into vast encyclopedias of data.
I think we all know someone who does this. They remember every single hurtful thing a partner has ever said to them. And it's so easy from the outside to say, you need to let it go. You're just holding onto a grudge.
People say that all the time.
Right. But Imbert is saying they aren't holding a grudge. They are operating a survival archive.
That is the exact mechanism. To the conservator, forgetting is infinitely more dangerous than hurting. By understanding everything, by keeping the archive perfectly updated, it hopes to predict and prevent the trauma from ever happening again. It is a desperate attempt to create safety through data collection.
Wow. And finally, we have the nocturnal wanderer.
The nocturnal wanderer is the entity that explores the margins. It usually only appears when the loud, demanding, heavily populated social world recedes.
Like late at night.
Exactly. It finds safety in the silence, in the dark, in the liminal spaces where the biomagnetic pressure of other people is finally gone. It's the part of the mind that needs the world to go to sleep so it can finally breathe and process.
Hearing this laid out, it sounds incredibly empowering. If you've spent your life feeling broken because you isolate at night, or because you can't let go of painful details, or because you feel like you're living two different lives,
Yeah.
the author is saying that what standard psychiatry labels as a disorder, this corpus honors as a highly specialized, successful survival skill.
It removes the profound burden of shame from the individual. It shifts the entire conversation of mental health away from pathology and towards structural adaptation. Your symptoms are not proof of your weakness. They are the archaeological evidence of your incredible endurance.
You built a civilization to survive a war.
Beautifully put. The therapeutic goal, then, isn't to fix a broken machine, but to honor that civilization and slowly help it transition its architecture from wartime to peacetime.
But, and this is a massive but, if we change how we view the struggling individual, if we admit that they aren't broken, they're just heavily fortified,
Right.
then we are forced to turn our gaze outward. We have to look at the world they are fortifying themselves against.
You cannot heal an individual if you insist on leaving them in a biologically and psychologically toxic environment. The individual's adaptations will just keep reinforcing themselves forever.
Which brings us to a sweeping critique of the systems that surround us. Let's look at how this applies to education first.
Yeah.
What the text calls paradigm shift number 6, crystalline education. Because if the individual isn't the problem, the school system is.
The corpus launches a rigorous foundational critique of modern schooling here. Our current system is built on cognitive standardization. The underlying assumption is that every single child should absorb the same information in the same way, sitting in the same rows at the exact same speed.
And if they can't?
If a child cannot do that, the system labels them as a failure or disordered.
But the text relabels that struggling neurodivergent student. It calls them a researcher in autarky. Let's break that down. Autarky means independence or self-sufficiency, right?
Yes, a researcher operating in complete independence from the standard methodology.
It's like looking at a kid in the back of the classroom who refuses to fill out the standardized worksheet because they are hyper-fixated on how the sunlight is refracting through the window.
Exactly.
The system says you are a defective product on our assembly line. But Imbert says, no, you aren't defective. You are an independent R&D department. You are exploring a different cognitive pathway.
It's a brilliant analogy. The child is gathering different data. The educational shift proposed in the corpus suggests we must completely move away from orienting students based on standardized test scores or rote memory. Instead, we should orient them based on their cognitive traction.
Cognitive traction.
Yeah.
Meaning the friction they generate, like how well they can pull an idea forward.
Exactly that. It is the ability to drive ideas, to connect seemingly disparate pieces of information, to synthesize knowledge, and to creatively adapt.
Because memory isn't the most important thing anymore.
Not at all. In our modern world, where an AI can memorize and instantly recall every basic hack in human history, treating human children like organic hard drives is just absurd. Human value lies in traction, creativity, empathy, and multidimensional problem solving.
But, I mean, massive institutions hate measuring things like creativity and empathy because they are entirely subjective. You can't put cognitive traction into a neat spreadsheet, so they force everyone back into the standardized box.
And it damages them.
It does. And the pressure of that box doesn't end when you graduate. It bleeds into everything, which forces us to look at the economic and societal shift. Paradigm shift number 7, the critique of attention capitalism.
This is where Imbert's sociological analysis truly bites. He defines our current modern environment not just as a financial market, but as attention capitalism. And he makes a very specific medical diagnosis about it.
Which is?
This system is biologically pathogenic.
Pathogenic, like a virus that causes disease. You are saying our economic system is literally making us sick at a biological level.
How? Because attention capitalism relies entirely on the continuous, unbroken capture of human attention to generate revenue. Every app, every news cycle, every advertisement is engineered to capture your gaze.
Right.
To do this effectively, the system uses intermittent rewards. The unpredictable nature of likes, infinite scrolls, breaking news notifications. The text argues that this constant, unpredictable stimulation is causing mass dopaminergic deregulation.
Let's tie this directly to the listener. Think about the last time you sat on your couch and mindlessly scrolled through short videos for an hour.
We've all done it.
When you finally put the phone down, you didn't just feel like you wasted time. You likely felt physically exhausted, slightly anxious, maybe even a little hollow. Imbert is saying that wasn't just a bad habit. Your nervous system was just structurally attacked.
It is an attack on your homeostasis. The system is structurally altering our nervous systems, inducing chronic stress, cognitive fragmentation, and biological exhaustion. It creates an environment perfectly designed to keep human beings stuck in a perpetual survival mode.
Constantly reinforcing those inner defensive walls we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
So the ultimate goal proposed by the text is the creation of a neurocompatible society. We need to design environments, our schools, our hospitals, our office buildings, our digital spaces, for physiological and psychological homeostasis.
We have to.
We have to design them to naturally regulate our nervous systems rather than allowing algorithmic capture to constantly deregulate them.
That is the utopian vision of the corpus, yeah.
Okay, but it is incredibly easy to sit in a studio and say, well, we need a neurocompatible society. It sounds great on a bumper sticker.
Sure, yeah.
But how do we actually build it? How do we practically intervene in a system as massive as attention capitalism? This is where Imber pivots from philosopher to engineer, doesn't he?
He does. He provides very specific avant-garde tools for change. And this is where the digital cybernetic architecture of the book itself becomes a tool we can apply to the real world.
Okay.
This is theory number 4. He introduces the concept of the sigillaries, or les sigillaires.
The text uses these concepts as active memory seals, or sigils. It lists families of sigils. There's the metacodex, which guards the core identity of a work, the stratification seal, which we talked about earlier, separating facts from hypotheses.
Right.
But I gotta ask, sigils? When I hear that word, I immediately think of someone drawing esoteric magical symbols on a basement floor.
Yeah.
Is he introducing mysticism into this highly rational framework?
It's a crucial clarification to make because we must maintain our epistemic hygiene here.
Right. Keep our hands washed.
Exactly. In ancient occult traditions, yes, a sigil is a painted symbol meant to hold magical intent or summon an entity. But Imber takes that concept, violently strips the spooky mysticism out of it, and repurposes the underlying logic for the digital age.
So what is it then?
What he has created is a cybernetic editorial architecture.
Cybernetic, meaning systems of communication, control, and feedback.
Exactly. We live in a digital world where information is infinite, fluid, and incredibly easy to corrupt. How do you protect the integrity of a complex idea from being diluted by the internet?
You tag it.
You tag it with a sigillary. It is a highly rational, visual, and structural way to organize conceptual information. It acts like an unhackable metadata tag that carries deep philosophical and contextual meaning. It keeps the ideas anchored.
Okay, so it's basically software architecture for philosophy. That makes a lot of sense. And that rational repurposing of occult concepts leads us directly to another wild theory, number 5, the egregore as a cybernetic model.
Another word steeped in the occult. Traditionally, an egregore is defined as a collective psychic entity created by the shared focus of a group of people, like a thought form that takes on a life of its own.
Right, like a ghost created by groupthink. But again, Imbert is stripping away the mysticism, isn't he?
Entirely. He uses the egregore as a brilliant, highly accurate sociological metaphor for shared institutional memory and group cohesion.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about your workplace, a hospital, or even a specific internet forum. They each have a distinct culture, a specific vibe, a set of unspoken rules that immediately dictate how everyone acts when they enter that space.
It's the informal, organic dynamic of the group. If you walk into a toxic corporate office, you can feel the stress in the air before anyone even speaks to you. That culture is the egregore.
Exactly. It is the invisible collective structure of human behavior. Now, here's the synthesis Imbert makes. The egregore is the organic, messy dynamic of a group's shared consciousness. The sigillary, those rational tags and rules, is the hard code that protects and directs that collective intelligence. To build a healthy, neurocompatible institution, you need both. You need a healthy egregore, and you need rigid sigillaries to maintain its boundaries and prevent it from becoming toxic.
That is a phenomenal way to give language to the invisible forces that shape our everyday. But let's get even more physical. What if the egregore of a space is already toxic?
Like a bad office.
Yeah, or what if you walk into a hospital waiting room and the environment is already actively deregulating the nervous systems of everyone in it? How do we physically, biologically intervene?
This is where Imbert introduces the tools of theory number 6, phonancy, chromancy, and the tri-equation of anchoring.
Okay, lay those out for us.
These are the practical, measurable tools for modulating our physical environments. Phonancy is the deliberate use of sound, rhythm, and acoustic structures to physically alter human biological states.
And chromancy?
Chromancy is the use of light, color, and visual frequencies to do the exact same thing.
So we aren't just talking about painting a wall blue because it looks nice. We are talking about using specific light frequencies and sound waves to literally force a nervous system to calm down.
Yes, and it is governed by what he calls the tri-equation of anchoring. It's a mathematical approach applied to human presence in a space.
What are the variables?
It balances effectiveness, meaning does it work, efficiency, meaning how much energy does it take, and efficacy, what is the long-term impact.
Give me a real-world example of this. How does the tri-equation actually look in practice?
Let's say you are designing a high-stress office building. You don't just put up cubicles. You apply phonancy by installing acoustic dampeners that absorb the specific high-frequency sounds of ringing phones and clacking keyboards, which are known to trigger cortisol spikes. Then, you apply chromancy by programming the overhead lights to shift their color temperature throughout the day, matching the natural circadian rhythm of the sun, which regulates dopamine and melatonin. You mathematically balance the environment to absorb the stress of the workers, rather than amplifying it.
That is incredible. And it brings us to the final, on-the-ground applications. Theory number 7. The author outlines 3 specific protocols for instituting these changes: the RMDD, HRR, and REC protocols.
Let's walk through what these look like in daily life.
First, the RMDD for educational systems.
Right. RMDD stands for the Protocol of Right, Merit, and Reparability. Its sole function is the deprogramming of systemic tension in schools. The guiding principle here is summarized by one of the most powerful quotes in the book. You don't always deserve what you inherit.
Let's sit with that. You don't always deserve what you inherit. Meaning, a child does not deserve the genetic predispositions, the generational trauma, or the socioeconomic baggage they walk into a classroom carrying.
Exactly. The current system punishes the child for that inheritance. This protocol is designed to manage the inevitable ruptures between what the institution demands of a student, which is the right, and what the individual child is actually biologically capable of giving in that moment, their merit.
And the reparability.
It provides a framework for actual systemic reparability, creating space for the child to heal rather than just hitting them with punitive discipline.
It changes the school from a factory into an actual sanctuary. Then there is the HRR for health environments, rapid harmonization at the instant zero. This one fascinated me because of how specific the physics are.
Yeah, this protocol relies heavily on specific frequency modulation, specifically targeting the 3 Hz frequency. In the corpus, this 3 Hz state is called the instant zero.
Why 3 Hz?
The theory, and there's fascinating fringe science exploring this, is that by exposing a dysregulated clinical environment or a highly anxious patient to this specific resonant frequency, you can eliminate the institutional noise.
So if I'm a patient terrified of getting an MRI, my heart rate is spiking, my inner conservator is panicking, you introduce this frequency to strip away that white coat syndrome.
Yes. The text posits that at 3 Hz, the veil between the root cause of an illness and the panic symptom is lifted. The human body can no longer sustain a simulated stress response at that frequency.
It forces a reset.
It drops into a state of profound baseline receptivity, allowing the doctor to get a true diagnostic read, unclouded by the patient's immediate terror.
Literally resetting a room's nervous system before you even attempt to heal the person inside it. It's a brilliant prerequisite for medicine. And finally, we have the REC protocol for the workplace.
Regulation and corporate protection. This protocol is entirely about managing what Imber calls the line of tension in corporate environments.
What does that mean practically?
It's a structural protocol designed to maintain a worker's physical and frequency integrity against the crushing pressure of productivity demands. It mandates the creation of a true decompression lock between a worker's professional output and their private biological well-being.
It is essentially a structural shield against attention capitalism. It prevents the egregore of the corporation from consuming the inner civilization of the individual.
That is the perfect synthesis of those concepts.
Let's take a massive step back and look at the territory we've just covered today. We have journeyed through all 4 faces of the Prism of Odysseys.
It's a lot to process.
It is. We've looked at the epistemology of how we learn, the biology of the sunlight we digest, the protective civilizations we build out of our trauma, the societal pathogens that attack our attention, and the actual cybernetic and acoustic tools we can use to fight back.
It is a truly monumental synthesis. What Alan Henry Regis Imbert has created here is not just a philosophical text to be read and put on a shelf. He has built a comprehensive, actionable diagnostic tool for modern humanity.
He really has.
He has managed to bridge the subatomic particles of our food, the deepest architectures of our inner pain, and the macro design of our societal institutions, all while maintaining rigorous epistemic hygiene.
It really is an entirely new map of reality. That old binary X-ray machine we talked about at the beginning is definitely broken. It can't show us the nuance of human existence.
Not even close.
But this prism offers a much richer, much more beautiful, and ultimately more compassionate way to navigate the murky waters of being alive.
It certainly does. And to leave our listeners with one final practical thought to carry into their week, I want to introduce one last concept from the corpus. It's called la saisie de surprise, or the seizure of surprise.
The seizure of surprise. I love the sound of that. What is the mechanism behind it?
It is a brilliant, radical strategy for dealing with points of rupture or systemic deadlock. The underlying idea is that when a system, whether it's an individual trapped in an anxiety spiral, a toxic, looping argument with a spouse, or a completely dysfunctional corporate meeting, when it is stuck in a disharmonic state, the system reinforces itself. It becomes a closed loop.
And logic usually doesn't work to break that loop. Right? You can't just rationally explain to someone having a panic attack that they shouldn't be panicking.
Logic fails because it operates on the same frequency as the loop. The only way to break the loop, according to this concept, is to introduce a completely unexpected, anomalous piece of data or physical action.
The surprise.
You must interrupt the cycle brutally with surprise. By doing something completely out of context, you destabilize the dissonance, you shatter the stasis. And in that brief, suspended moment of shock, the system's defenses drop, and a reconfiguration to a healthier frequency becomes instantly possible.
You break the pattern to reset the frequency. That is incredible. And that leads me to a final challenge for you, the listener, as you go about your day. I want you to look closely at your own life. Where is a cycle currently stuck on repeat?
A good question.
Where is the dissonance looping endlessly in your relationships, your workplace, or inside your own inner civilization? And what seizure of surprise, what totally unexpected, anomalous action or thought could you introduce today to shatter that stasis and give yourself a chance to reset your own frequency?
It is a profound, actionable question to sit with.
Thank you so much for joining us on this massive deep dive into the prism of odysseys. Keep exploring, keep questioning the maps you've been handed, and most importantly, keep exploring your own inner cosmos. We'll catch you on the next one.